DDC, la carnita asada.
Greetings, everyone. Brad here with Mild Mannered DDC. We're going to do a review today of a Gerber that I've been interested in and that actually surprised me. So many of you are familiar with the flat iron, which was their first sort of cleaver style flipper that they introduced a couple of years ago. This one, there you go, is the Asada. That's right, the Gerber Asada. Really kind of interesting knife and caught me off guard on a couple little ways here. So I wanted to do this review and get this out for you. So first though, for anybody who's new to the channel, thanks so much for stopping by. We do gear reviews, a lot of knives, but trying to do a bit more gear. So if that sounds good to you, please go ahead and subscribe. I'd love to have your support. And for those of you who are already subscribed, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. It means really a lot. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the specs on this Gerber Asada, and then then we'll do some size comparisons. Then we'll get into the classic mild-mannered review for the day. So specs on this particular knife. We've got a blade length here of 3 inches on the money, but a cutting edge of about 2.5 inches because of this large finger choil right here. We got a very hefty blade stock of 0.14, and that gives you an overall sort of tip to tail when it's all opened up here of about 7.5 inches. And then a weight, it's also not the lightest knife in the world, especially considering its size here of about 4.8 ounces. So there's some specs. How about a few size comparisons here on the Gerber Asada? How about a mild-mannered Ontario Rat number 1? There you go. Benchmade bug out. There you go. You can kind of see what we're dealing with here. A little bit smaller, well, a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller. Hard to tell kind of with the Benchmade. How about a standard Swiss Army knife? There you go. And what else do I have? Well, I have a Delica up here. Let's just throw a Delica up there. There you go. Ooh, that Delica's got a nasty, dirty blade. Ugh. What have I been doing with that? So there you go. That's what we've got here for your size comparisons. So let's go ahead and get underway with the mild-mannered review. This particular knife is made in China. It's not one of their US-made knives, and this particular model retails for about $39. We'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end, but there you go. There's some information for you there. So when we do a classic mild-mannered review, we talk blade, we talk action, then scales and hardware, and then ergos and carry. So let's start with the blade on this Asada. So what we have here, pretty obviously, is a cleaver-style blade. And for those of you that remember the flat iron, the Gerber flat iron, and I'll try to put a picture up here just so for those of you that aren't familiar with it, it was more squared off. So this one has a little bit of attitude to it right there. And it also felt, I think, a bit, it wasn't as tall. This feels like a taller blade than the Asada, or than the flat iron was. So there you go. We've got a flat ground. So despite the thick stock, flat grind starting all the way at the top, coming down to a reasonably thin edge, actually. I was pretty impressed, actually. Pretty darn reasonably thin edge, and then you've got this sort of stonewashy finish there. Not much in terms of blade markings. You've got a serial number there. You've got the Gerber logo. Done pretty darn well. Now, the steel. 7CR 17 MOV. That's a steel Gerber likes to use. Now, the benefit of the 7CR is that it's cheap, right? And this knife at $39 is pretty cheap. But that steel, it's just not even, it's a little lower than I'd like to see it. Now, that said, for what most people are going to use this knife for, it's probably going to be just fine. You're just going to have to sharpen it up a little more frequently. But this also does come in a D2 model. And I think that's important to note here. Now, the price on the D2 is a bit more, jumps up to about $50, but you can also get this in D2. I appreciate the fact that Gerber is doing that. They're giving you one knife that has, the same styling, but if you're willing to pay a little bit more, you can get it in a better steel. If you don't care, then you don't have to pay the extra, $10 or $15 depending on when and how you get these. So I think that's nice. I'm glad Gerber did that. And, for the purposes today, we're in the 7CR version, so it is what it is. Now, the grind on this, I want to highlight. Look at that. Not only is it done really, really well, it's even on both sides. They just, nice work on this one, Gerber. Not only did you get it down to a relatively thin edge, starting at that blade, stock thickness, but they just did it really well. So I appreciate that a lot. This actually has a really nice blade, and it is pretty darn sharp, kind of hair popping. So I was really pleased with that. And this is a good slicer. Now, other things to mention about the blade. You've got no jimping or anything like that anywhere, but everything is very nicely chamfered as well. So everything's rounded off. Even, this is a 90-degree angle here on top of the spine, but it's not sharp at all. Here, where they've got sort of this plunge line, very, very smooth, well done. Everything's just chamfered on this blade excellently, except for the actual blade, which you don't want chamfered, you want sharp. So there you go. So this is one of the best blades I've seen out of a Gerber knife that I've handled anyways. So very well done. I think it's attractive. I think it looks neat, and it's pretty darn functional. They did the grind all but perfectly, honestly. So yeah, definitely liking what I'm seeing here in the blade, except for the steel. But then again, you want to pay a little more, you can get a different steel. So there you go. Now, let's talk about action. So the action also surprised me on this Gerber. So it is running on caged ball bearings, and you can see that in there, I think. If I can get this to focus, I probably need a flashlight. Bear with me here for a sec. Not that you care, because you probably just can believe me when I tell you that it's got ball bearings. But let's see if we can get a little light in there. There you go. You can sort of see them. Well, that was probably a waste of time.
I've just sucked 1 year of your life away.
Sorry about that. They're in there, trust me. And so this runs quite smoothly. The detent is a little bit soft. It's not perfect, but you know what? It's not bad either. And for the price, it flings right open. You've got a nice fall shut action. Fall shuttier. It's not, it's not whatever, but what it is smooth. And that I can appreciate. I don't need my knives to all just be guillotines dropping shut. And this is a pretty heavy blade too, so I'm not surprised that it falls shut pretty well. And if you give it a good flick, comes right down. So a lot to like there with that action. Now, I did find with this, as you can see, there's some jimping on the flipper tab. You sort of could, I think, do this as a light switch where you pull it this way. That works fine, but I found it more comfortable just to do push button, and it actually works a little better. This is not one, you can, like I said, it's a little soft. So if you're not really pushing it, you're going to get one of these. But by and large, if you're doing the normal, push, it's going to come out there just fine. And I like that a lot. I think they did that action, like I said, a lot better than some of the other actions I've seen on their knives. The fastball, I think, probably being the other pretty darn good action. So there you go. Now, riding on ball bearings, it's got a frame lock here, and it's got a good lockup of about 45%, maybe 50%. There was no blade rock, no blade play, so very well constructed. Now, it also comes with what they're calling their patented pinch plate, or anti-pinch plate, I guess, more than anything. And what this does is serves sort of dual purpose, and I think that's pretty cool. So it serves as an over-travel stop, meaning you can't push the lock bar beyond this plate, so you're not going to, overextend your lock bar. But what it also does is solve a problem that a lot of knives sometimes have, which is especially frame locks, where you get your fingers up here to deploy it, and you see where my finger wants to naturally go. If that pinch plate's not there, I'm pushing on the lock bar, which can kind of ruin the action. Now for this one, this prevents that from happening. So that's a really nice little attention to detail. It's done well, it's flush, it's right in there. You can take it out, you can put it back. Gerber, I like that. This is nice. This was also on the flat iron, but I like its implementation here as well. It's unobtrusive, it's out of the way, you don't feel it, nothing catches on it, but it makes sure that you don't end up in one of those situations where you're not able to flip the knife every time because you've got that squish on the lock bar, which is not uncommon in frame locks, so especially on the more budgety end. So there you go. That's what you've got here with action. Pretty decent action. Definitely for 39 bucks, nothing to complain about there. And I like that they decided to go with some bearings on this one. Now, scales and hardware. So with scales and hardware, we've got aluminum on this side with a stainless steel on this side. At least I think this is stainless. Yeah, I think the stainless on this side, aluminum on this side, and then the liners are, the liner on this side is also stainless. Now, I'm a little bummed that, I don't know if you can see, this is kind of this darker finish here on this side, and this one's, the stainless, it's just a slight different in color there. I'm not sure why they felt the need to do that.
Well, what do you have to say for yourself?
But they did, so yeah, that's a little bit of a bummer that those aren't the same color, but you don't really notice it. It's pretty close, and the fitment of the aluminum is quite good. I think it looks very nice. Kind of give you an up closer there. Look at that. There you go. Nice looking aluminum. You've got some standoffs here on the back, kind of pillar style standoffs. Oh, I didn't mention in action, dead centered when I got it, remains that way right now. You've got some flat panhead screws. I haven't disassembled this, and I will say I've come into some trouble with Gerbers in the past with their screws either being soft or being Loctited in and difficult to unscrew. But you know what? I'm not messing with it, and for 39 bucks, I don't need to do much cleaning on this knife. I can blow it out and throw some oil in there and whatever and call it good. A little bit of a little decoration on the pivot there, which I think looks cool. Kind of looks like the Imperial logo from Star Wars, maybe just slightly. I don't know. Anybody? Okay. But nice little touch. And again, flat panhead screws throughout. Very, very good. So that's what you got in scales and hardware. Now let's talk ergos and carry. So the ergos on this, I think, are actually really good. So in a hammer grip, feels good. Sort of the saber grip feels good. Just naturally your thumb wants to fit. Maybe a little jimping right there might have been nice, but overall, no complaints there. And then if you want to choke up, boy, you can choke up on this thing and really get into some action. Here, whether you're doing some fine cutting, and because of the way this little bit of an attitude here in the design, you get this nice little tip. So you still got some good tip on this. Yeah, I mean, from an ergo standpoint, I like this a lot. And in fact, both of these are one of the things I kind of noticed, despite this being kind of a heavy knife, and we'll talk about it in a minute, it's pretty well balanced. There you go, on one finger, and that's pretty darn nice, considering. This could have been a wonky sort of feeling in your hand, this kind of knife, with this sort of big fat blade that's a little unwieldy, but it's not at all. It feels really good. And like I said, both positions feel great. So the ergos on this are really, really good. Honestly, I'm not trying to oversell that, but for my hands, they fit great. So I like the ergos quite a bit. Now, carry. So it's heavy, right? I mentioned it's heavy. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's too heavy for you. 4.8 ounces. It's a little heavy. I had it in my pocket. It wasn't bad. And it's relatively narrow. So, I mean, it carries pretty darn well. I also will say, this clip, when you first look at it, I'm not huge on the Gerber logo there, but it's kind of attractively done, so I don't really mind. But when I first saw this clip, I was like, oh, that's going to be trouble. But I think this is actually an improvement over the clip that they had on the Flatiron, which was similar, but at a slightly different... if you watch my last video... Nope. I'm having trouble with my little Hank demonstrations here when I'm there we go. So, not the deepest carry, but also not, you're going to have a little bit sticking out, but that always sometimes makes it easier to pull something out as well. So anyways, from a carry standpoint, this clip, in all practicality, ignoring my bad example here, slides in and out of the pocket quite well. It's on a flat material here. It's springier than it looks, to be honest with you. And it holds it secure. So this was even in a pair of gym shorts, which, it was heavy in there, but it was there and fine. So I actually give the clip pretty high marks. So there we go. This is the Gerber Asada, $39 for the 7CR. You can, for $50, get a micarta version, I believe. This also comes in a black aluminum also, if I'm remembering correctly. But that micarta and D2 will run you about $50. There you go. This is, I think, the nicest Gerber I've handled, honestly, of late, especially on the budget end. Fastball was quite a bit more. So, for $39, this can compete with the Civivis of the world and some of the other, Budge, certainly Kershaw. And, frankly, this is better put together than a lot of CRKTs I've had on my table lately, or not even reviewed because I just didn't want to. So, yeah, this is nicely done. Good job, Gerber. I'm happy to see this. This is a cool offering. Keep up this kind of work and, providing these kind of options. I think people will resonate to that. So with that, hope you've enjoyed this review. Thanks so much for coming along and checking it out. Stay safe out there. Be mild-mannered to one another. And all the best.
Carnita asada, sí, sí, la carnita asada. La carnita asada, sí, sí, la carnita asada. La carnita asada.